Welcome to the Benzano Podcast, what we're calling a spade a spade. Great to be here with you guys today. Nobody cares. Go home. It just dawned on me this morning, folks. You think if the NBA was 2 months away from starting their season, the NBA that's in bed with Disney, ABC, ESPN, that they wouldn't tell their networks to start talking about their league to get the word out to the public of what's going on? You don't think they'd start pushing propaganda because they have so much money to lose? If there's
The WNBA season is only months away. Collective bargaining negotiations are happening right now. Revenue sharing, salary caps, the possibility of a lockout, real stakes, real money, real risk. So why does it feel like no one in mainstream sports media is talking about it? If the NFL were 2 months from a labor standoff, ESPN would be in full panic mode. Daily debates, breaking news banners, insider reports every hour. If the NBA was staring at a season delay, you'd see wall-to-wall coverage. Networks would be applying pressure. Owners would be responding publicly. Players would be dissected on every show. But with the WNBA, there's mostly silence. Yes, Caitlin Clark gets mentioned. Her highlights trend. Her name sparks debates about popularity and ratings. But when it comes to the league's CBA fight, almost nothing. That silence raises an uncomfortable question. Is it strategic, or does it signal something deeper? Because networks like ESPN and ABC have financial relationships tied to broadcast rights. If a full season were truly at risk, wouldn't there be more urgency, more pressure, more public conversation? Instead, the volume feels strangely low. And sometimes, silence isn't accidental. Sometimes, it tells you exactly how much is really on the line. And that's where this story starts getting complicated. Here's the part that feels strange. The WNBA is negotiating a new collective bargaining agreement. There's real tension between owners and players, revenue splits, salary cap gaps, disagreements over what even counts as revenue. The season isn't that far away. And yet, where's the noise? If the NFL were heading toward a lockout, ESPN would be running countdown graphics. If the NBA had owners projecting losses under a proposed deal, every debate show would be dissecting it. Stephen A. would be yelling. Analysts would be breaking down numbers. Insiders would be leaking updates hourly. But here, it's mostly quiet. Yes, Caitlin Clark gets airtime, her highlights trend, her jersey sales get discussed. She's mentioned in most popular athletes' conversations, but the league's actual labor fight rarely front and center. That raises two possibilities. First, maybe networks simply don't see the CBA negotiations as dramatic enough to dominate headlines. Not every labor discussion becomes a national spectacle. It's possible editors are waiting for something concrete, a deadline, a vote, a formal breakdown, before amplifying it. But there's another interpretation. Broadcast partners like ESPN and ABC have financial ties to league rights. If the financial impact of a missed season were massive, you'd expect visible urgency, public pressure, narrative framing, debate. The relative calm suggests one of two things. Either executives are confident a deal will eventually get done, or the financial exposure isn't large enough to spark panic. That's the uncomfortable part. Silence doesn't automatically mean indifference, but it can signal priority. And when a league's biggest individual star is discussed more than the league's survival itself, it starts to feel like the brand of one player is driving attention more than the institution behind her. Which makes the next question even more important. If the media isn't applying pressure, who actually holds the leverage here? Now here, where the temperature rises. Former MLB executive David Sampson didn't sugarcoat it. On his podcast, he essentially delivered a blunt message to players in the WNBA. If the deal doesn't heavily favor ownership, it's not happening. That's not posturing, that's a leverage statement. Sampson argued that owners are looking at long-term financial projections and they don't like what they see. Under some of the union's reported proposals, ownership groups are forecasting significant cumulative losses over the life of a new agreement. Those figures haven't been fully disclosed in official documents, but the concern itself has been widely discussed in business circles. And here's the key point. In labor disputes across professional sports, history shows owners rarely agree to terms that lock them into structural losses. From the NFL to the NBA, prolonged standoffs typically end with players compromising more than they initially intended. That's not commentary, it's precedent. Sampson's broader argument is that players may be negotiating from a momentum mindset. Attendance is up, viewership has spiked. Caitlin Clark has brought unprecedented attention. From the outside, it feels like the league is surging. But owners may be viewing it differently. Short-term popularity doesn't automatically equal sustainable profitability. Expansion fees and broadcast bumps don't always translate into stable recurring revenue. If ownership believes the current boom is temporary rather than permanent, they'll be cautious about locking in long-term financial commitments. That creates a fundamental disconnect. Players see growth and want compensation to reflect it. Owners see volatility and want protection against downside risk. And when those two perspectives collide, compromise becomes harder. So when Sampson says, "Take the deal," he's not necessarily saying the players are wrong to push. He's saying leverage favors ownership, especially if networks aren't amplifying pressure and the season clock keeps ticking. Which leads to the next uncomfortable question. Are the players negotiating from strength or from emotion? Now let's slow this down. Because there's a lot of noise online about what players are demanding, and not all of it is confirmed. The union representing players in the WNBA has reportedly asked for an increase in revenue sharing tied to gross league revenue. Early rumors floating around social media claimed figures as high as 40% or even 50%. However, those numbers were never formally confirmed in official reporting. More credible updates suggest the union's more recent proposal centers closer to the high 20% range, reportedly around 27–28%, starting slightly lower in year one. That's a notable drop from earlier speculation, which signals movement. But that's only part of it. The players are also pushing for a significantly higher salary cap. The current team cap sits around $1.5 million. Ownership has floated projections that could raise it to roughly the mid-$5 million range under a new framework. The union, however, is reportedly seeking something closer to $9 million or more per team. That's not a small gap. We are talking about millions of dollars per franchise, per season, compounded over several years. There's also the issue of guaranteed housing, which many players have publicly advocated for. From their perspective, it's basic stability. From ownership's side, it's another recurring cost layered onto a system they already claim is financially tight. And then there's the biggest disagreement of all: what counts as revenue? Players reportedly want expansion fees, relocation fees, and certain one-time broadcast bonuses included in the gross revenue calculation. Owners, according to public commentary from figures like David Sampson, argue those are non-recurring windfalls and shouldn't be treated as ongoing operating income. That distinction changes everything. Because if you count those one-time spikes, the revenue pool looks bigger. If you don't, the math shrinks fast. So when people say the players are being unreasonable or the owners are being cheap, it's more complicated than that. Both sides are negotiating off different definitions of the same pie. And until they agree on what that pie actually includes, the percentages almost don't matter. This is where the entire negotiation quietly turns into a battlefield. Because the biggest fight in the WNBA-CBA talks isn't just about percentages. It's about definitions. Players are reportedly pushing for certain one-time financial boosts, like expansion fees, relocation fees, and upfront broadcast signing bonuses, to be included in the league's gross revenue pool. From their perspective, that money exists. It's real. It's flowing into the league. So why shouldn't it count when calculating revenue sharing? On the surface, that sounds reasonable. But ownership sees it differently. Executives like David Sampson have publicly argued that those payments are non-recurring windfalls. Expansion fees happen once. Relocation payments don't repeat annually. Signing bonuses from new media deals aren't guaranteed to show up every season. And that distinction matters more than people realize. If you treat one-time spikes as ongoing operating revenue, you inflate the base number. That means higher revenue sharing, higher salary caps, higher guaranteed payouts. But once that temporary money disappears, the recurring business may not sustain those long-term obligations. Owners are reportedly focused on sustainable revenue, ticket sales, recurring broadcast payments, sponsorship renewals, and merchandise. They want formulas built around predictable cash flow, not short-term surges. Players, on the other hand, see expansion happening. They see growing attendance. They see viewership spikes, especially tied to Caitlin Clark. From that vantage point, it feels like growth is real and measurable right now. So why shouldn't compensation reflect that momentum? That's the philosophical split. Is the league in a sustainable growth phase or in a temporary spotlight moment? Because if it's sustainable, then expanding the revenue definition makes sense. If it's temporary, then building long-term cost structures off short-term boosts becomes risky. And until both sides agree on what real revenue actually means, no percentage proposal will solve the deeper issue. This isn't just math. It's trust in the future. And right now, that trust gap might be the biggest obstacle of all. There's no denying it. Caitlin Clark changed the temperature of the WNBA overnight. Attendance spiked, television ratings jumped, road arenas sold out when she came to town, jersey sales exploded, social media engagement surged. For the first time in years, the league wasn't fighting for attention, it was commanding it. That kind of momentum feels transformative. But here's the uncomfortable question hovering over these negotiations. Is this a permanent shift or a temporary surge? From the player's perspective, the answer seems obvious. Clark's arrival didn't just bring hype, it brought new fans, new eyeballs, new relevance. If the league is growing in real time, then compensation structures should evolve to reflect that growth. Why lock in outdated economics when demand is clearly rising? But ownership may be looking at the same numbers through a different lens. History shows that sports often experience star-driven spikes. One generational athlete can temporarily inflate ratings and merchandise, but sustaining that growth requires broader competitive balance, multiple stars, long-term fan retention, and consistent profitability. Owners might be asking, what happens if the novelty fades? What happens if the attention plateaus? What happens if the financial boom is tied too heavily to one singular figure? Because here's the reality, Clark is a phenomenon, but she is one player. And building long-term revenue models around a single catalyst carries risk. If negotiations drag into a lockout and Clark misses games, the damage could be immediate. Momentum in sports is fragile. Fans who just started paying attention might drift away. Networks might fill programming slots with something else. The spotlight could dim faster than it arrived. That's why this moment feels so critical. Clark represents opportunity, maybe the biggest in league history. But opportunity doesn't automatically equal stability. So is she a long-term foundation for sustained growth? Or a once-in-a-generation spark that has to be handled carefully? The answer to that question may quietly determine how much risk each side is willing to take. Here's the part nobody wants to say out loud. If there's a lockout in the WNBA, who really takes the bigger hit? At first glance, it feels mutual. No games means no ticket revenue, no broadcasts, no sponsorship activations, no merchandise flow. The league stalls. But when you zoom in, the impact isn't evenly distributed. Players lose paychecks immediately. For many, salaries aren't generational wealth levels yet. A missed season doesn't just delay income, it disrupts financial stability. Even with overseas opportunities, there's risk, uncertainty, and logistical strain. Owners, on the other hand, often have diversified portfolios. Many WNBA teams are tied to NBA ownership groups. While a season loss would hurt projections and long-term growth plans, ownership typically has more financial cushion to withstand a temporary pause. Then there's the network factor. If ESPN or ABC lose WNBA games, they can slot in alternative programming. It's not the same financial earthquake as losing the NFL or NBA season. That doesn't mean there's no impact, but the urgency level is different. And that difference matters in negotiations. History across sports shows something consistent. Prolonged labor disputes tend to favor ownership. Players feel the financial squeeze first. Public attention fades. Momentum slows. Eventually, compromise becomes necessary simply to restart the engine. Now layer in the current moment. The league is riding unprecedented attention, driven heavily by Caitlin Clark and a broader surge in interest. A lockout would freeze that momentum instantly. Casual fans who just tuned in might not stick around. Sponsors may hesitate. The growth narrative could stall. That's the hidden risk. It's not just about missing games. It's about interrupting a fragile window of opportunity. So when executives warn that holding out could backfire, they're not necessarily dismissing player demands. They're pointing to timing. Because leverage isn't just about what you want. It's about what happens if nothing moves at all. This is the question sitting underneath everything. Because before you can argue about revenue splits or salary caps, you have to answer one thing: how financially stable is the WNBA right now? From the outside, it looks like a growth story. Expansion teams are being announced. Attendance is up. Television ratings surged, especially with Caitlin Clark entering the league. Social engagement has never been higher. Sponsors are paying attention. That feels like momentum. But growth and profitability are not the same thing. The WNBA has long operated differently than the NBA or the NFL. Many franchises share ownership structures with NBA teams. That can provide stability, but it also blurs the financial picture. Are teams operating independently at a profit, or are they supported by larger ownership ecosystems? Public financial data for individual teams isn't fully transparent. What we do know is that the league has historically operated with tight margins. Even with recent surges in visibility, long-term sustainability depends on recurring revenue, not just momentary spikes. Expansion fees create headlines, but those are one-time payments. Broadcast deals generate buzz, but the structure of those agreements, how much is recurring, how much is upfront, matters significantly in CBA calculations. So when owners talk about projected losses under certain proposals, they may be factoring in operational costs that fans don't see: travel, facilities, marketing, staffing, infrastructure, and future media uncertainty. At the same time, players look at sold-out arenas and rising ratings, and understandably believe the league is entering a new financial era. Both sides are interpreting the same growth through different lenses. Is this the beginning of sustained profitability? Or is it a high-visibility moment that still requires cautious budgeting? The truth likely sits somewhere in the middle. But until there's agreement on how stable the foundation really is, every negotiation point becomes magnified. Because you can't divide profits confidently if you're still debating whether they're durable. This is it. All the debates about percentages, salary caps, and revenue definitions eventually led to one unavoidable reality: a deal has to get done. The WNBA isn't negotiating in a vacuum. The season is approaching. Training camps don't wait for philosophy. Broadcast schedules don't pause for accounting arguments. The clock is real. Right now, the financial gap is not small. Owners have reportedly floated projections that would place the 2026 team salary cap around the mid-$5 million range. The players' side, based on reported proposals, is aiming significantly higher, closer to the upper single-digit millions. That difference isn't cosmetic. Over multiple seasons, it represents tens of millions of dollars in total commitment. And when ownership claims certain models would lock them into projected losses, that becomes a structural issue, not just a negotiating tactic. At the same time, players see this as a defining moment. With Caitlin Clark driving unprecedented visibility and new fans entering the ecosystem, the argument from their side is simple: if not now, when? If the league is experiencing growth and cultural relevance, why lock in conservative economics that reflect the past rather than the present? That's the tension. Owners are negotiating off sustainability. Players are negotiating off momentum. And momentum has a shelf life. If talks stall and a lockout becomes real, the consequences won't be theoretical. Games would be missed. Revenue would freeze. The current spotlight could dim. Casual fans who just discovered the league might drift away. On the other hand, if players concede too much, they risk cementing a framework that undervalues their role in this growth cycle. That's why this isn't just another labor discussion. It's a crossroads. Compromise means both sides walk away slightly dissatisfied, but the season survives. Collapse means betting that the other side blinks first. And historically, that's a dangerous gamble. This is The Edge. Not a dramatic headline, not social media outrage, not debate show noise. An actual tipping point. The WNBA is standing at the most important crossroads in its history. On one side, unprecedented attention, packed arenas, record-breaking ratings, the arrival of Caitlin Clark, who has brought new fans into the ecosystem at a scale the league has never experienced. On the other side, a financial structure still trying to prove it's sustainable long-term. That's the tension. Owners are looking at spreadsheets, forecasts, risk, sustainability over decades. Players are looking at momentum, growth, cultural relevance, a rare moment where leverage feels real. Both sides believe they're protecting the future. But time doesn't wait for alignment. If this deal collapses and the season stalls, the damage won't just be about missed games. It will be about lost trust. Casual fans who just tuned in may not return. Sponsors could hesitate. Networks might quietly shift focus elsewhere. Momentum in sports is fragile, and windows like this don't stay open forever. At the same time, if players concede too quickly, they risk locking in a structure that doesn't reflect their current impact or the league's upward trajectory. That's why this moment matters so much. It's not just about revenue percentages or salary caps. It's about defining what this league believes it is. A cautious business still finding stability, or an ascending product ready to demand more. The silence from major networks adds another layer. If there were billions at risk, you'd hear the noise. Instead, the quiet suggests this fight may be happening without the pressure cooker other leagues experience. Which means the burden falls entirely on the negotiating table. Compromise keeps the spotlight alive. Stalemate risks dimming it. And right now, the clock isn't just ticking toward opening night. It's ticking toward a decision that could define the next decade.